British person living in America, and around the world, Americans are seen as people that don't travel. And I'll tell you why they don't travel. I'm in Michigan right now. Yesterday it was snowing, today it's nice, sunny and warm. They don't need to go other places for the seasons, because it's right where they are. I mean, plus, you have like Colorado for skiing, and Michigan for skiing, and Minnesota for skiing, and stuff like that. You can go down to the beaches in Florida, you can go to Texas, you can do whatever you want. The whole landscape is pretty much completely different in each state. So, they don't need to travel. Plus, if you go to each state, you're guaranteed you'll be able to speak the same language and use the same currency. And that's the main hassle when you travel abroad.
I've seen a lot of videos about Europeans talking about Americans not traveling, and most American responses have been about how big America is. But I don't think that's the real issue. What I don't think a lot of people realize is just how expensive it is for Americans to travel versus how cheap it is for Europeans. This is a fare schedule for the Metro North, New York's commuter railroad. The most expensive peak hour fare is $20.50. That's a trip of 85 miles. That's long for a commuter rail trip. This is a one-way flight from Paris to Barcelona. You see that price? That's 17 euros. At today's conversion rate, that's less than $19. Now that is an anomaly. The fares are not normally that cheap, but they're usually under $50, and you can travel between any number of European cities for less than $50 each way. But it's not just less expensive to travel within Europe, it's cheaper for Europeans to travel to America. I picked a random week in May 11th through May 17th, and as you can see, nonstop round trip, the cheapest fare from Chicago to Paris is $1,010. Using those exact same dates, the cheapest nonstop fare from Paris to Chicago is €539. It's not even a contest. It is so much cheaper for Europeans to travel, and they have no idea.
I understand why Americans are struggling to be healthy because, as you can see, the breakfast is not healthy at all.
Yeah, but you ordered it? It's really bizarre to try and blame Americans or, do some stereotype about Americans because of a choice you made. And I'm not disagreeing. The breakfast doesn't look overly healthy. Looks delicious, mind you. But no, it doesn't look super healthy. It's obviously fried and there's oil and all that stuff. But you ordered it. And if that is the restaurant I think it is, and I feel fairly confident, they have other things on the menu that would be considered far more healthy. You chose not to order the other things. You chose to order the quote-unquote unhealthy breakfast. You can't order it and then turn around and be like, oh my gosh, I understand why Americans are on Ozempic. You don't have to eat that. It's an option. Just like how there are healthy and unhealthy options in literally every country in the world. I'm just saying, America has so many things that you can legitimately criticize us for. You ordering something just to say it's unhealthy kind of feels forced. Do better.
I am so tired of y'all in the UK saying things like Americans speak a dumbed down version of English. First of all, the word you're looking for is dialect. Secondly, we wouldn't even speak this shit if y'all didn't come over here with y'all bullshit. I'm sorry that we didn't get the best that y'all were giving when y'all came over here killing people. We clearly speak what y'all forced Native Americans and slaves to speak. They say things like sidewalk when it's really a pavement. When y'all over there with the queen or the king, whoever's running the show now, when y'all over there with them, it's the pavement. When y'all are here, it's the sidewalk. And then y'all act like half of the English language aren't words stolen from other languages, but y'all talk so tough. For example, when you guys send out invitations, right, you give them a time frame to RSVP. But what does RSVP mean? Do you know? It's an acronym, yes, but it's an acronym for Répondez s'il vous plaît. French for respond if you please. Without the French, what would we say? Huh? Hit me back? That's not professional. There are dialects spoken all over the world. That's because Europeans went around to different parts of the world, colonizing places that already spoke their own language. When being forced to learn English, they learned it a different way. They just incorporated their own language. Just like there's different versions of Spanish spoken all over the world. It's all Spanish, yes, but it's a bit different. Maybe, just maybe, if y'all grandpappies would have stayed their asses in Europe, we will all speak our own native language.
There are some common misconceptions that people often have about America and Americans in general, as told by a British guy who now lives in America. First one, that America is full of obese people. Okay, so first of all, no it isn't. And secondly, in my experience, so I'm just going to compare it to where I'm from and where I live. So I'm from Lancashire in England, so just think of Manchester, near there, and I live in Arizona now. So if I'm to compare them two places, I would honestly say they're like for like. I've seen the same amount, ratio of fat, thin, and fit people here as what I do in the UK. So honestly, no different than where I'm from. America is not a safe place, and it's only a matter of time before you get shot. Yeah, that's another misconception. I get friends ask almost in like a banter way, like, oh, have you been shot yet? But, like jokes aside, there is that sort of understanding. People do think that America is this place, because guns are legal in many states, that, it's only a matter of time. Well, they are legal in the state I live in, and I've never felt safer, to be honest. I've been in some situations in the UK where I definitely did not feel safe, and was definitely not safe for that matter. But no, I've not come across that here at all. All Americans live in massive houses. Yeah, that's false as well. I bet a lot of the Americans, or all of them, wish they did have houses like in Home Alone, etc. And I blame the movies for us having that misconception. And I say it to my wife all the time when we're watching anything. I say, see, look at that house. That's why we all think that all the houses are just bigger here. I mean, we don't think everyone lives in a mansion, but we just assume that all houses are generally just bigger here, but they're not. I was surprised, they're actually not. Another one, that Americans are not well traveled. Now, I covered this in another video just specifically on that point. False. Americans, a lot have traveled out of America, by the way. I've met loads that have, and I've met a tiny amount in the grand scheme. But a lot of them have traveled around America, and it is massive. It's huge. I also covered the fact that because generally speaking, Americans don't get that many days off work, especially, so if you commented on that video that they get 2 months off, but they've worked at the company 10 years and they accrue more time. Well, if you just start a normal job, a lot of them offer just 10 days, 2 weeks. So it's not long enough to go long haul flights. So that's another reason why a lot of them don't go out of America. But America has so much to offer as well. So many different climates. You could get all the seasons in every state simultaneously, I'm guessing. But you certainly can get hot and cold and everything else. And you can get different landscapes, from desert to grassy hills to seasides. There's history as well, whether it be, more like modern history, man-made history. And you've also got loads of natural wonders as well, and some ancient history as well that's not as well known but still exists. Watch Ancient Apocalypse on Netflix. It covers some of that, by the way. Another one, that Americans all drive gas-guzzling V8s. Honestly, lots do. Lots do. I do, because I wanted to be as American as possible when I got here. No, it was the novelty. I wanted the most American car I could get, just because they're not available in the UK. So I got a V8 gas-guzzling muscle car. But honestly, I would say, well, where I live, most people have electric cars, actually. There's just Teslas everywhere. So yeah, that's not what I was expecting anyway. I probably see more electric cars than I do your typical V8 gas guzzler type car. Anyway, I can see these sweat patches growing. I've just got out of the gym. I need to get out this hot car and take another shower, I think.
A common stereotype that I've encountered about Americans is that we are not that interested in international travel or seeing countries outside of our own. I went down such a rabbit hole about this today, and I really want to share what I found. I've mostly encountered this stereotype when traveling in Europe or when talking with Europeans, and so specifically I want to compare the United States to Europe. According to Pew Research, 27% of Americans have never left the United States. And that is compared with 37% of EU citizens who have never been outside their own country. To put that into perspective, here's a map of the US states that have an international border at all. If you don't count Florida because it's a maritime border, there are only 17 states with an international land border. So I thought it'd be interesting to find out what percentage of the US population lives in these states that have an international border. This is using 2020 census data, and it's only 34.6% of the US population. And that's even being pretty generous, because I did include Pennsylvania, which has a population of over 13 million, and that is its border with Canada. All to say, it's geographically more difficult for us to leave the country, and yet we're still doing it at a higher rate. Not to mention, it is way more expensive for us to travel. Even flights within the US are comparably more expensive than flights within Europe to other European countries. That's all without mentioning the train networks. We don't have high-speed trains and our train tickets are way more expensive. For those of us who do want to travel, our passport fees are more expensive than most European countries. Here's the UK prices, for example. 86 euros in France. Of course, there are some countries like Norway where the price is more similar to ours. But where I think this really gets interesting is I came across this post by a pilot who was talking about how it's more expensive to fly from the United States to Europe round trip than it is to fly from Europe to the United States round trip. So I went on to Google Flights and I typed in major European and US cities, and I just looked at the fare calendar to look at the lowest fares in different months from these cities if you just switch them. So what that means, New York City to Paris round trip was consistently more expensive than Paris to New York round trip during the same times. I encourage you to try this on Google Flights. Just switch the destination and see how much more expensive it is to fly from the United States than it is to fly from Europe. And then on top of that, we have no mandatory vacation. And 1 in 4 US workers don't have any paid vacation time or holidays. So not only is it more expensive, more geographically difficult, and we have less vacation, but we still make the effort to travel internationally.
What pisses you off about Americans?
How stupid they are.
No, how stupid we are.
Yeah, Americans are really stupid.
So I'm tired of people taking the piss out of Americans. So I'm gonna quiz y'all. What's the capital of Berlin? What?
I don't know.
How many states are in the U.S.?
I don't know. 49?
Yes, 49. How'd you know that?
I don't know.
Did you cheat?
No?
Which president is on a $4 bill? Is it?
There's no $4 bill.
Okay, she's actually good. How many continents are there?
5?
Yes, there are 5 continents.
Is it not 5?
What is?
It's not 5, is it?
Hell no. Congrats.
Is it 4?
It is 4. It is.
I'm a French girl in America, and today we're going to talk about American stereotype while I'm making crepes. This is a stereotype. All Americans are fat and they eat fast food every day. Not true. I mean, like, there is literally fast food everywhere in the US, but Americans are definitely not fat. By the way, this is buckwheat flour, and that's what we use to make galette de sarrasin, galette bretonne. This is the best crepe ever. Also, you cannot say that every Americans are fat because literally the size of the country is the size of a continent, and each states are pretty different from each other. All Americans own a gun and they love guns. That's not really true. I mean, like, yes, of course there is guns in America, but it's definitely not the majority who's just walking around with a gun. No, guys, no. But for sure, if you go to France, we won't have guns like you guys have guns. Like, no, it's not happening. And it's pretty shocking for us Europeans whenever we're coming at first here in the US to see guns. But it's definitely not everywhere. Americans don't care about the environment. That's not really true, I think. For sure, in America, they're not as sensitive as us about the environment. However, each states are different again, and I think it depends where you are, because some Americans are really into the environment. Americans are big hypocrites. It's true and not true at the same time. I think Americans are not hypocrites, they just have a different aspect of saying things than us French people, because you guys think that us are really rude, meanwhile we're just really straightforward. Here in America, everything is huge, and that is true. Why, by the way, why your house are so huge? Why the roads are so big? Why y'all driving big ass truck for no reason? America is really expensive. Yes, the fuck it is. The food in the US is trash. True and not true. You can find definitely trashy food here, and the basic food here is way more trashy than in Europe. It's less natural and have less flavor. However, if you put the price, you can find stuff pretty tasty here in the US as well. It's just expensive. Everything is way too sweet or way too salty. True. Why everything is so sweet and so salty here? Anyway, the first crepe dough is done. Let me know in the comment section if you guys think about more American stereotype.